Hi, I'm Chris.
I'm Bebbo.
And I'm Millsy.
Each week, we're going to unleash the thrill of sporting discourse as we debate some of the hottest topics across the globe.
With insightful analysis, diverse perspectives, and engaging discussions, we strive to entertain and inform as we tug at the fabric of social morality.
We dive into the ultimate court of conversation and feel the friction of mass debated sports. Welcome back, listeners, to episode 16 of the Masturbated Sports podcast. I am joined, as always, by Bebbo and Chris, and we have a pretty stacked lineup this week. How was your sporting weekend, Bebbo? You get up to much?
I actually went out and watched the supercars, and you know how much I love motorsports. Not much at all, but it was surprisingly good live. I didn't mind it, you know. Good spectacle in the Porsche race. Not so much the supercars. I mean, they fucking go, but the Porsche race was quite good. A lot more passing and action there, and a big smash into the wall right in front of us. And that's all you want to see when you go to motorsport. I'm pretty sure you're just baying for blood. So yeah, it was a victory there, but missed the Cowboys game. You know, I guess the other way. So you can't have everything in life, can you?
Well, probably not a bad thing considering the result.
Yeah, but that would have been exciting. I would have been angry at Chad Townsend like everybody else in Australia. I mean, why is that motherfucker kicking when the game's on the line? He can't kick from 10 out. You got Scott Drinkwater that drains it from anywhere on the field. Can't wait till he's got Roosters colours on. 2025's my year.
Nice, mate. How was your weekend, Chris? Did you get up to much?
Mate, pretty good. I unfortunately missed the All Black game, so I was pretty gutted about that. But I did watch another gutting result. Watched the Dogs lose to the Warriors lose to the Dogs in a cracking game. Good game to watch. So good game to watch, but poor result, unfortunately, for the poor old Warriors. But again, Dogs on the rise. So we've been shouting that out on the podcast. Dogs within 3, Dogs of War. So yeah, good weekend, mate. How about you?
Yeah, well, another tough loss for me, but in the same game that New Zealand side probably enjoyed watching with the Union. But yeah, it was a promising.
Probably another tough loss. Probably another tough loss this weekend too, mate. But anyway,
I mean, with the Aussie ref, I forget his name, Nick Berry. I think all hope's lost playing at Eden Park. But the odds are actually better for England to win this match than they were last match, which I'm a bit nervous about.
Former Australian Test halfback Nick Berry. Shout out to Nick Berry.
Yeah. How's the racism, mate? Well, just because he's Australian, he's going to hate English people. We don't all hate English people. Only 99% of us do.
That's true.
That's right.
But yeah, no, I saw a thing on the internet today, and it'll be really good to see an Aussie dominate a rugby match in New Zealand for one time in distant memory. So that'll be fun to see. But yeah, no, it was a good weekend. It was a heap of sport. I actually stayed up till 2 a.m. as well and watched the first half of the England game in the soccer with the quarterfinals, and must have fallen asleep. And I woke up to when Netherlands equalised at 6 a.m. So I woke up cheering because I thought England had scored, and I completely slept through the second half and penalty. So yeah, I was a bit dusty on Sunday, but it was made better by the fact that England soccer got up, and by the time you listeners are hearing this, we'll know if England are in the final or not, which of course
they won't be.
So.
We'll save you the pain now. They won't be.
That's it. Yeah, no, it was good. It was really good. All right, so let's get stuck into our first topic, and it's something that's been simmering for a while now, and it's the introduction of the next NRL team. And it seems as though a deal, if not done, is very close to being done, in allowing the Western Australia Bears, located in Perth, they'll be the next team. So we'll start with you, Bebbo, and I'm pretty excited for this one because I know you two have got pretty contrary views on this. What are your thoughts, mate? Do you want to give us any insights to potentially any news that you might know about this deal?
I won't profess to know the inner workings of the deal. No, not one bit. But I'm pretty excited about this because for it to be a true national sport, and I've said it plenty of times before, we need to cover the entire nation. And starting on the West Coast, where there's a bigger presence than there is in, say, South Australia, for example, is obviously a much more reasonable place to go. Now, I know Chris isn't going to like it because he's talked about travel and all this sort of stuff on previous episodes, but the Western Reds were pretty successful in their time, not so much on the field, but they didn't embarrass themselves on the field, but they were pretty successful as far as attendance per capita and all that sort of stuff goes. I think it's the best place for them to put the next team because it is not in the backyard of another team. You're not stealing fans from the same region. But the partnership with the North Sydney Bears is a bit perplexing in one way. So, sure, it'll give them a reserve grade team, a legitimate reserve grade team for their players out of the top 30 or their pathways programs that aren't picked in the NRL team each week to go play against quality competition because you can't have them play NRL one week and then go play A grade in the Western Australian competition and stay within a whisker of getting another A-grade recall. It's not the next step down. It's 4 or 5 pegs down. So it does give them a legitimate reserve grade team to send their players to. Whether it gives them a fan base, they say there's 200,000 plus North Sydney fans. I mean, I used to be a North Sydney fan when I was a kid, first team I ever went for. But you've moved on. A lot of people have moved on because, well, you can't just keep going for a New South Wales Cup team, especially when you're not from the region. So I don't know how many of those are going to jump on board with the Western Australian Bears. How many of those are going to adopt it like it's their own club? I really don't think that that's the case. But honestly, if it gives them a court, 1 in 4 people there, or 1 in 5 people there, it's a basis to start with, plus literally everybody in Western Australia who wants to jump on a local team. So, well, obviously, Chris, you're not going to agree with me here. So why don't you tell me what you think about the alliance?
Mate, I'm absolutely not going to agree with you. Like you mentioned before, we touched on this in a podcast, in an episode, probably going back 3 or 4 now. And I just don't think the WA team will go well because I just think that at the end of the day, you got to look at, so you mentioned the Western Reds. So if you look at their supporter base, so just, I suppose for a bit of context, the Western Reds came in 1995. They were gone by 1997. So they lasted 2 years.
Yeah, but now, so were the Hunter Valley Mariners, mate. And that was nothing to do with that. That was circumstantial because of Super League ARL wars.
I was going to get to that. Well, that's right. The Western Reds chose to go the Super League route. But, so that's talking about their success. They weren't overly successful when they came into the comp. Like they didn't, I was just trying to, I had their stats up before. I'll come back to that. But you mentioned the membership base or whatever the comment you made. So the actual statistics for their membership base, in 1995, they had 10,000 members. In 1996, they had 6 to 7. And in 1997, they had 4 to 5. So it was in steady decline year on year on year. So, you couple that with the fact that WA is a massive AFL state. They're going to struggle to get lion's share of support over there because sponsors and dollars, corporate dollars, because sponsors are going to want to get behind teams, those teams over there that are getting the lion's share of, I suppose, the viewership. And we go back to pathways. We talk about this. Well, I talk about this a lot of the time about pathways, and you mentioned it as well. The junior pathways stuff in Queensland and New South Wales in the NRL or in rugby league, in juniors and seniors, and we've mentioned these sort of stats on the podcast in the past, but Queensland there's 60,000, New South Wales there's 110,000, WA there's 4,000 registered players. Now, you could argue, and to your point, you probably argue, okay, well, they don't have a team there. Who are they going to support? It's you need to grow it. I just wonder if the lack of junior and senior players coming through can support and can sustain your team. The other thing as well is they need to raise, I was reading this morning, they need to raise $30 million as part of their as part of their bid. So I don't know whether, I would imagine a lot of teams coming into these bids would be in different financial positions. Obviously the Dolphins, by all account, when they came into the comp, were one of the most, best back clubs to go and do it. Conversely, I don't know what the WA team would be like. And again, coming out of North Sydney, you're going to get a huge following coming out of that. But like you mentioned, is it going to transpose across into WA? So look, for all those things, mate, I don't think it'll succeed. I think they'll come into the comp. I will say I really think it will depend on how they travel in the first year or two. If they can gain quick traction, much like the Storm did, you look at what happened with the Storm in Melbourne. That could have been a real
disaster,
nightmare of a disaster. Could have been disaster, but it wasn't, right? If WA can replicate that, and we'll get to that later, if WA can replicate that, then potentially. But for all the reasons I've outlined, I don't think it will.
Yeah, see, the Storm's a good case point, I think. Okay, so you talk about Western Australia's AFL rich. Well, where's more AFL rich than Victoria? And Melbourne go down there. They're they've got one of the best attendances year in, year out in the NRL. Now, granted, there's a lot more people in Victoria than there is in Western Australia, but there's also a shit ton more AFL teams in Victoria than there is in Western Australia. So,
okay, so I'll counter that.
Why can't they dig into that territory?
I'll counter that. Victorians pride themselves on being the sports capital of Australia, right? So you could have a Tiddlywinks team down there and Victorians will get behind it, right? So I think the fact that, the Victorians are sports mad. The rest of the country's sports mad too, but Victorians, they pride themselves on that. And the fact, like I mentioned before, the fact that they came out of the gate and started winning, what did they win a premiership in 98, I think, 1 year into the comp?
Yeah.
And then obviously the rest is history, as we know. So I think the fact that, if you spin that on its head and the Storm doesn't win a premiership in the second year in the comp, and then they go on to shit the bed for however many years, right? Do you think their memberships are going to continue to stack up and stack up and stack up? As much as I just said that they are sports capital, they love a winner, right? I don't know if that would, necessarily fly. So I just think, I think that it would largely be based on how they come out of the gate, I think, will determine their success.
Yeah, and as far as the financial side of things, I'm pretty sure this is the whole bid with WA, is it's constantly been backed by mining sponsors. That was a big point of their pitch originally, is they've got so much mining money ready to back them through it. So raising 30 mil, I don't think is going to be an issue for them to get going at all. And let's be honest, once the NRL is not going to make the decision without getting an answer from the broadcaster about how much more money it's going to make them. So if they have gone to Western Australia, it's going to be worth their time to go as far as the money coming back through the game. So, yes, they do need to be competitive. But I should have done this experiment here. I can name maybe two NRL players who have come from Melbourne, right? Melbourne juniors come through, and they both come through the Storm, and that's Silfa Longo and young Tonamapia. That is it. Those two players. There is 5 or 6 from Western Australia. Both the Goodwins, Bryson Goodwins, and what was his brother? Started with B as well. Bronson Goodwin, Curtis Rona, Wanga Blake. There's a few more anyway. There's been, as far as I'm aware, more junior players come out of Western Australia that have made the NRL than there has been out of Victoria. And they've never even had a team. So the sky's the limit.
But hang on, were they playing? But hang on, were they? So when we say they come out of WA, right? Were they?
Curtis Rona was
played all their senior footy, played all of their, or did they grow up there, move when they were 8, and move to Queensland and move to New South Wales or wherever, and then you know what I mean? Like that's a different conversation.
No, Wanga Blake.
If they grew up playing senior footy,
Wanga Blake and Curtis Rona were both brought out, obviously, as teenagers. They're not going to be brought out as adults. If they get to that stage, well, no one's looking at them anymore. But teenagers, they're going to get identified, and that's probably in these national schoolboy competitions that they run each year or things like that where they've been spotted. But that's a pretty good number of players to come out of a state that has zero representation. And like, okay, so you could look at the AFL with like the NT and the AFL and say, okay, well, they don't have a state team either, but they've got players littered all through things. But the NT is an extension of Adelaide when it comes to their sporting world. So it is all AFL. It's slowly turning up there. So maybe one day you'll start to see rugby league players come out other than Will Chambers. But I just don't think, yeah, okay, there's a concern immediately about their junior pathways and all that stuff. But we've talked about the decline in financial viability of rugby union in Australia. Every single good rugby union player is going to see the more dollars in the NRL path, and you'll find that they will steal pretty much half, if not more, of their good talent that will end up playing rugby league and going through rugby league pathways. In fact, a lot of them probably only play rugby union right now because they know the Western Force is their only way through that system. So, I know it's all it's all guessing game and it's not an exact science, but you have to fucking put a team over there, or we cannot be classified as a national competition.
One of the questions I was going to ask both of you guys is, where do you think they should play? Because as a spectator, if they play at Optus Oval, watching rugby league, rugby union at an oval is horrendous. Mm-hmm. It's terrible, right? So where are they going to play? That's where they're going to play. They're going to play at Optus.
Well, Melbourne did it for years, right? And then they eventually built them a stadium. So maybe that's the plan. See how it goes. 2 years in, it's a big success. Western Australian government throws some money in, build them a stadium.
Well, the obvious choice is where the Force play. What's called
Subiaco,
HBF Park, I think is what's called now.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
and that's obviously a rugby pitch, and rugby league and rugby union basically on the same pitch, just lines are different. But I mean, NRL clubs, currently don't have massive crowds in some of these games, and it would be pretty cool, and maybe get the whole WA behind the team a bit more if they play on a lesser, more intimate pitch to begin with, and then looking on expanding that could be their point of difference. They play on basically a park ground. I remember when Perth Scorchers, like when you see them play on TV, like it is a very intimate crowd. There's not even stadiums and stuff. They just sit on the bank and have beers, and they could do something very similar over there, which seems to have definitely been taken up by the audience over there. So I'd say something like that. But yeah, playing it at Optus would just be a bit of a shame.
I love the idea of small. Yeah, I love the idea of small grounds, going back to small grounds in the hill. Like, as you guys know, I live on the sunny coast, and I've watched a few footy games, NRL preseason games, and the sunny coast. I see you wearing a Falcons jersey there, Bebbo.
That's a training shirt.
Watching
the
match.
But watching, watching the footy there at the sunny coast stadium, it's pretty much a hill most of the way around, apart from the other side is the grandstand. So, I like the idea of them going back to a small ground, or like an intimate setting with a hill and things like that. I think it would, do wonders for the spectator. And that's what we're talking about, is you got to make it good for the spectators.
I think you'd also get more people travelling to somewhere like that, where they can get really up and close with the person or with the players, as opposed to travelling to Optus Stadium and go and seeing them there, because they can go and watch any Sydney team play, at a cricket ground once in a while. Like that's been and done. But to watch them like real up close, you see how packed out all these sort of regional outreach games are when they go to places like Bundy and stuff up around here. They're pretty packed out, and it's pretty cool for the spectators. So yeah, I'd like to see them do that, but I don't think they will, unfortunately. But yeah, I kind of agree more with Bebbo on this. I think if the NRL was going to expand, they had to tap into Perth sometime, and population growth in Perth has gone up about 40% in 20 years. So there is potentially more people than when they last had a team out there. And I do worry a little bit that, like you said, Chris, that Melbonians, I don't know what they are, but
Mexicans.
Yeah.
Mexicans, that's better. Like you said, they love sport. The mining companies are probably sponsoring this a lot more over in WA to lower the FIFO cost for their workers and try and get more people to live out there as opposed to keep going back to Queensland. But so it will be interesting to see how it takes. The only thing is, it would have been nice to have like a South Australia team and then probably migrate to WA, just because they sort of had that stepping stone then, and they could do a tour of that part of the world. And because you're going to get away teams flying over one day over to Perth and flying back. Yeah, okay, it's not a big deal, but could have been something of it. They could have done the Western Australia tour, South Australia and Western Australia in one swoop. That would have been, quite exciting potentially for those teams. Probably wouldn't have helped them that much, because I bet a lot of the Sydney teams would have enjoyed that 2 weeks stint of travel away from home, and probably would have got more people going rather than just one off match to WA. But no, I am quite excited to see how it goes. I personally won't go out there to watch it, but maybe if you're a Roosters fan, die hard, you might want to go out there.
Yeah, but look,
I'm not flying out to WA.
I'm not flying to fucking Penrith to watch a game there either. So it's not like, yeah, it's
not WA than Penrith.
Yeah, you're not putting a team in a new location to make it a novelty tourist trip. You're putting a team in a new location because it's sustainable in that area. Yeah, that statement makes no sense, because literally I've been to like Suncorp, Gold Coast, Queensland Country Bank, Redcliffe, but that was before they were even in the comp, obviously. Sydney Football Stadium and Allianz. That's it. So how many other teams are in the league? I've been watching rugby league since 8 years old, 7 years old, 6 years old probably, and you're not travelling around just to watch teams play. It is what it is.
Vegas would say different, but that's a bit of a point.
Yeah, but that's a novelty. There you go. That's a novelty. That's not a week in, week out team. So who gives a shit if no spectators are going to travel from the East Coast to the West Coast to watch the games? It shouldn't even be part of the consideration. You should just be looking after whether the West Coast people are going to watch those games.
They could do really well, actually. Because like you said, if no one is going to travel out there, they can make it a really hostile ground and difficult to win at. And if they do have the crowd really amongst the players, it's going to make it not very nice to play at if you're a I don't know what you call it, a Sydney player.
That's probably a good segue into who do you think they should target when we talk about players and who they should kind of go after. I mean, like I said before, I think it'll live or die by the early years of success, and if they can garner that, then they can get that membership up and then get a roll on and so on and so forth. So who do you guys, I'll probably go to you, Bebbo. Who do you think they should look to target in those early years to try and solidify that team and get them going and give them that success and give them that early momentum?
Well, I think it's been proven a lot. It's your spine. Obviously, you've got to get your spine right, especially half your spine anyway. But I'll start with that. And look, bear in mind, I understand that they're still going to be competing with every other club that's chasing spots in their roster and competing for those. And a lot of players might not want to move over the West. Some players will. Young players, it's a bit of a hit and miss. Some will want to go for the opportunity. Some won't want to move too far away from home. It is what it is. But what they're talking about coming in 2027, isn't it? Is that right?
7.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so they gave the Dolphins only the year before to sign people. They're talking about allowing Perth to do it the 2 years before. So essentially, they'd be able to sign people at the end of this season. Is that right?
2025, correct? Yeah, correct.
No, by the end of this season, though, because say 2 seasons prior, right?
End of next year.
So that gives them a bit of an advantage.
No, end of this year, because it'll be 2 years. It'll be start. Yep, correct. 24. Yep.
And it gives them a little bit of an advantage over other clubs, because while they can approach people 2 years out, other clubs can only approach them 1 season out, sort of thing. So they do give them, they should have gave that to the Dolphins originally. It makes way more sense for a new club to get a little bit of a leg up there to build their roster. But anyway, look, so spine. There's so many, obviously, you got your fullback, your hooker, your 5'8", your halfback. So many explosive young fullbacks in this game. And when you see guys like Hammer go down, Trey Fuller comes down, he's not exactly that young, but, you got Jai Gray, you've seen 2 guys like David Armstrong and Fletcher Sharp at Newcastle. I think it's the last spot in the spine you need to fill, because you'll find one. I think there's a plethora amount there waiting for a full-time job. You'll find one. 5'8", bit the same. Very important. Very important to have a good 5'8", but not as important to have a good halfback and a good hooker, as far as I'm concerned. So you look around, there is a few halves coming off that are pretty good between now and then. Jerome Hughes, Sam Walker, Tamari Martin, Tyron Wishart, Luke Metcalf, probably in that order too, I'd put it. But look, rumblings of Jerome Hughes being homesick in Melbourne might be just horseshit, but it's got to come from somewhere. So let's just assume that there's zero chance Jerome Hughes is going to Western Australia. So I am attacking Sam Walker as hard as I fucking possibly can. He's starting to kill it. He's just going to get better and better and better. If you can pick up Sam Walker and I mean, like, give him a fucking young DCE, good contract for as many years as possible, for as high, as much money as you can afford to throw it at him, I'm giving it to him, because you need that fucking player to attract more. If you can only get, okay, I know he's going to be old and retired here, but I'm going to use him as a fucking point of talent. If you can get someone like Chad Townsend as your halfback, the rest of your recruitment is going to be twice as hard. You know what I mean? Like, it is shocking. If you get Luke Brooks, your recruitment is going to be shit. No one wants to play with a guy that's never played a fucking finals game in 14 years of A grade. You get Sam Walker, and he keeps killing it for another 2 years, then everyone, like, you're going to get guys go, fuck, they're actually going to build a good team. I'm going to edge forward's going to go, I've got a player to run off. Outside back's going, I've got exciting guys going to feed us the football. We're going to play an exciting brand football. So I'm throwing the fucking house at Sam Walker. Then I'm going to my hooker. And look, again, a few quality guys, but all this changes too, because guys will get extended before they even get to this point. Sam Walker's probably one of those people. The Roosters won't let him go. But Reece Robson, Blake Brayley, Reed Marnie, Phoenix Crossland, Connor Watson, Jaden Brayley, all quality players that can play hooker. You got Blake Moser, who's yet to really get a proper crack at the Broncos, and while they keep signing Billy Walters, he's more than likely to fucking be shifted on somewhere else too. Now, look, I'd start on Reece Robson. Pretty sure the Cowboys are about to extend him for quite a long, long time, so I don't think he's going to even be an option. So for me, I'm taking one of the Brayleys. Blake's probably the same as Reece Robson. Cronulla's not letting him go. So I'm going Jaden Brayley or Connor Watson, or both if you can get them, to be honest. And 5'8", Jaden Campbell. I'm not even going to mention who else is off contract. Just Jaden Campbell. You partner Sam Walker, Jaden Campbell. Give yourself just a solid tackling machine hooker like Jaden Brayley. Already, that's an exciting prospect. I know just because you target them, you're not going to get them, but we're just living in a world where you get what I want. And then I'm going back and I'm signing, if I can, Tyran Wishart also, purely as a hooker off the bench, backup half, or he could play 5'8" and Jaden Campbell could play fullback if your young fullbacks don't work out. And then fullback, fuck spending big money on a known name. Turbo's off contract, Ryan Papenhuyzen's off contract, Cobbo's off contract. They'll probably be extended before then. They're going to blow your cap. You don't need a player like that. Tane Tuapiki, Blaze Talangi, Isaiah Iongi. Young. Go young. Keep an eye on the Q Cup, the New South Wales Cup, and even the Pathways, because we've already seen that this year you don't need to spend big on your fullback. What's your thoughts on that, Chris? Pick it apart.
I had a bunch of the names that you mentioned as well, and I had the exact same thing. Obviously, you're going to focus on your spine. I had at fullback, I had Fletcher Sharp. Obviously, by that stage, he's 20 now. By that stage, leading into 2027, he'll be 23. So, like you mentioned, he's young. I didn't know about the homesickness thing with Jerome Hughes, but I had Jerome Hughes. By then, he'll be 33. I think with those 5'8" halfback hooker positions, particularly 5'8" and halfback, you want those older sort of heads. At least one of those positions in halfback or 5'8", you want one of them as an older head leading them around the park. Obviously, Jerome Hughes is that New Zealand international player, and by that stage, like I mentioned, he'd be 33. So if you could get him, I would be going after him.
I would too. I agree.
What he's done, I feel like Jerome Hughes, he was obviously living in the shadows of Cooper Cronk down at the Storm for a long time. But in the I suppose the nursery that is the Melbourne Storm, they just continue to produce excellent players. And Jerome Hughes in the last 4 or 5 years has just come alive and become an excellent player. So I would be going up to him. I believe Harry Grant's off contract around then as well. So again, I'd be going after Harry Grant. He'll be 29. Little on the older side, but I think again, Origin player. It's not that old, but you don't. I mean, he's probably middle of the pack, right? In terms of, no pun intended, in terms of age. But Origin player, great player if you could get him. I had also had Herbie Farnworth and Cam Pereira.
Oh, so you're going straight to the outside backs? I don't think outside backs when you go. I mean, they'll polish off a team. They'll finish a team off. They'll make a good team great. But if you've got nothing inside them, they're getting no good ball. They ain't doing shit. Like, do you really think Greg Inglis would have been Greg Inglis if he never got the ball fed to him? Yeah, he's not a guy coming in to take hit-ups to do this work. It's not Brian To'o or Greg Marju that comes in and takes these hit-ups and gets himself involved in the game like Zach Lomax has done this year. If they're not getting fed the ball in good situations, what the fuck's Herbie Farnworth going to do? What the fuck is... And Cam Pereira, especially, what's he going to do? He's got no hit-ups.
Are you talking about getting fed the ball off a good half 5'8" pairing, or are you talking about off the back of good forward momentum?
Everything that you just mentioned. Yeah, both. Yeah.
Yeah.
So outside backs are literally the last thing I'm filling in this team.
It's like the Bulldog signing.
Yeah.
Didn't go well.
But I also had Payne Haas coming off contract. He'll be 27 by then as well.
Do you reckon he'll be sick? Do you reckon he'll be sick of losing by then, though? Do you reckon he'll be sick of never getting a premiership by that point, where he's just going to go sign with the Roosters or Melbourne for a premiership?
Well,
he still where his loyalties lay last year with the contract negotiations. Just whoever gives him the biggest check, he'll go there, wouldn't he?
Who? Payne?
Well,
Not if he hasn't won a premiership by that point.
But it's like you mentioned, Bebbo. If they start to get a couple of key linchpin positions sorted and they start to build a team around it, and these guys can see, fuck, they're actually building a half decent team here who could win a premiership, then yeah, I think they will. And that's a save this point for the next part of the conversation too, and we can come back to it. But yeah, I think if you're getting those linchpin positions sorted and they're building a team around it, then absolutely, why not? I mean, what are you going to try and go to somewhere else and roll the dice anyway? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I understand that it's the odds of them winning a premiership. I mean, Melbourne were an anomaly, right? Coming out of the gate and doing that.
Yeah, massive. Yeah.
The Dolphins approved that, so.
Look, what do you think? Obviously, you want all your good players. Obviously. Sorry, Millsy, just going to cut you out there. But you want all the best players. But okay, and Yatoi Kamanu is probably another one too that could be that premier front row. But I think if you got guys that can still do a decent job up front for a fraction of the cost, like Daniel Saifiti, Nafahu White, Fanua Pole, Zion Mayu from Warriors. I mean, if he doesn't start getting runs over, if he doesn't start getting runs, he's a front row. If he doesn't start getting runs over there shortly, he's going elsewhere.
Yeah.
No, he's a fronty.
And he's young too. He's 20,
yeah.
21.
But other than that, we're talking 3 years away, 2.5 seasons away. The under-19s the State of Origin was the other week, man. And Loco Pacifici Tunga could be one of the best young forwards I've ever seen in my life. He is amazing. You've got a 19-year-old. He's going to be 21, 22. He's going to be a bit cheaper. You're going to get Xavier Va'a, who was on the Queensland team as well. If you can get a couple of them and match them up with some good old veterans on good, on cheaper deals, you're going to have a stronger depth in your pack. You're going to have that experience that can teach young guys. You're going to have that massive, ceiling from these young blokes, especially Pacifici Tonga. Like, that guy is absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, sorry, Millsy, you go. I'll cut you off.
I was going to say so I do agree the spine is important, but I think, and it's the same with any contact sport, big players, enforcing players, they win matches, they get you over the gain line, and the Dolphins have sort of proven that. With Bromwich, Mark Nichols, and all those players, you need big men up front, and then your spine is important. But I'd argue that having big, strong boys in your team is going to win you more matches than having a spine. If you have a small pack, you're still not going to win a match, even if you've got the best spine in the comp. It's just not possible. So I would just say focus on buying big meat up front, and then you try and sprinkle in a couple of those X factor players, and what you said about them signing a few players who are that X factor. Dolphins missed out, remember, on Munster, but it was still the threat of him. Yeah, they did miss out on all of them, but it was still the threat that they could do that, help people go there. But it didn't matter that they didn't get him, because they already had that safety blanket of having already signed a pretty decent, experienced enforcer type pack, and that has sort of carried them, especially through this period, because none of them are getting selected for Origin because they're either too old, but they can turn them on when required. I'd
have to stop you there, because two of their forwards, Tom Gilbert and Tom Flagler, would both be picked for Origin if they weren't injured. So
true, but they've
and Felice Kafusi is playing Origin.
Well, they've built the depth in those places, haven't they? So they can afford to lose a few of them and not have a massive drop off. And that's the problem with these new teams, or potential problem, is the depth. They need to build that strength and depth. And my argument is you build the strength and depth up front, and you sprinkle it with a couple of nice handy players like Herbie Farnworth, for example, at the Dolphins.
Yes and no. Yes and no, though. I mean, look at the Warriors for so long. They've had some of the biggest packs going around, and it's rocks or diamonds with the Warriors. Yeah. So, yeah, big guys are great. Don't get me wrong. Big physical guys are great. But, mate, if they've got rocks in their head, like a lot of those players can have, if they're, at the end of the day, I think we all agree that you have to get a team with a wealth of experience and youth, and that are going to gel together and actually play. And I think that's probably a good segue to go on to who coaches them, because I think that is going to set the benchmark or set the bar for how they play and how they perform.
There's pretty slim pickings in the coaching department at the moment, just speak to Parramatta. But who would, if you could have anyone coaching that team, Bebbo, who would you pick? Not if it's even possible, just who's your top coach at the moment in your eyes?
Oh, regardless of whether it's possible or not. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, it's got to be Jason Demetrio, surely.
Thought it was that or Michael Checker. It's going to be a close one.
I don't know. Fucks me. Obviously, Wayne Bennett, because of the way he brings players together and what he's done at the Dolphins, but he's just signed a 3-year contract with South, so it's going to overlap, and it's not possible. So they're talking about Brad Arthur. Maybe that's all right. I mean, when he took over Parramatta, they literally just got the wooden spoon. So it's not like he hasn't dragged the team off the canvas before.
And he might have a point to prove as well.
Yeah, well, that's right. He's got experience. He's got a bit of. He's got players that will back him still. So when they're trying to sign players and like, oh, what's this coach like? And I know Bryce Cartwright. What was Brad Arthur like? And he's like, he's the fucking best coach I've ever had. Something like that. That's got a bit of sway. Where if you bring someone over that's not tried or tested, he's got no real local references. Players are going to ask their mates. They're going to ask people they know what those coaches are like. And if they're not getting any feedback or they're getting bad feedback, it's not going to work. So I don't know. Don't ask me. We're not on the inside of who coaches or how good they are as coaching at training and all that sort of how they deal with the players. But
you're going to want that experience at the top, aren't you, Chris? Someone who's been in the NRL and done it before.
Yeah, mate, for me, I would, it's probably pretty obvious, but I would go with Craig Bellamy for all the reasons that we mentioned for Melbourne. And I think for me, supporting my comment around Jerome, going after Jerome Hughes and trying to drag him across, I think if you could jag him and Harry Grant, that'd be the start of a pretty decent spine, to be honest. And the fact that when Craig Bellamy took over at the Storm, I think the 3 years prior, they finished sixth, going back 6th, 9th and 10th. And then the preceding 5 years after he took over, they went 3 semis in a row. Then they won 3 minor premiers in a row, minor premierships, and they went grand final, loss, grand final win, grand final loss. And that was in the first 5 years of his stewardship. So, some would say, well, yeah, Chris Anderson did the bulk of that, whatever. Not really, because, it was kind of like 2, 3, 4 years, into the making. So, I think I would go with Craig Bellamy. And you guys mentioned it before about, the players that talk about, he's kind of in the same ilk as Wayne Bennett, right? They talk about Craig Bellamy as a real father figure. Cam Munster was saying it the other day, and one of his decisions to stay on and sign with them, and it's all around him being a father figure and things like that. So I think he signed on. He's got 1 more year next year at the Storm. I don't know what he's got after that. I think he signed 5, didn't he? So he might have 2 more after that. I think he's got to tell him at the start of every year. He's got to tell him what he's doing for the preceding or the next year, what he's doing for the following year. So,
the fact that Jason Rolls has gone to Parramatta pretty much says that Craig Bellamy isn't hanging him up anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. No, well, and also the talk is that his son's going to take over, Bellamy's son.
I don't even know who's coaching or had anything to do with it. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think his name's Aiden Bellamy. Mm. So it was him and Jason Rolls apparently. Anyway, so I would go for Craig Bellamy, and I think that I'm with you, Bebbo. I think Wayne Bennett would be great, but I just think Bellamy is a little bit younger, and probably got a little bit more longevity in him, and I think he's the same pedigree and he's got the same same pedigree as Wayne Bennett. So I think I'd go with Bellamy.
I'd just be worried that he'd drop off the same cliff that Joe Biden has obviously dropped off in the last couple of years.
Wayne Bennett? Fuck, don't put him the same.
He's not getting any younger.
Joe Biden.
Not yet. I'm saying in a couple. Who knows? Yeah. The amount of stress that bloke's had in his life in the coaching box, he's done well to keep it going this long. All right, let's stick on rugby league, but we'll change our tone a little bit, and we'll look ahead to a week today as we're recording, a week on Wednesday, to Game 3 in Origin. I'll go to you, Chris. The changes that Queensland have made, how confident do you feel?
Not very, to be honest.
Shit.
No, I'm not. Look, obviously, the thing is, right, a lot of the changes that they've made is kind of in line with, I think, what everybody knew they were going to do and what we sort of said last week as well. I'm still a little bit surprised that they're running with, obviously Billy Slater's got a bit of a thought process around how he's going to play Callum Ponga and Walsh in there together. But for all the things we mentioned last week, I just don't think I'd have Walsh in my side full stop. I would have dropped him and I would have put Callum Ponga at fullback. But I think obviously Gagai coming back in, I think, we mentioned that last week, and I think him coming back into the side is a good thing. I had him in the centres. Bebbo, you had him on the wing. They've got him playing in the centres. I tend to probably agree with you. I know I said centres last week, but after your comment and thinking that through around, some of his best performances have been on the wing. I would probably tend to put him on the wing as well. But anyway, the fact he's come back in, I think, is a good thing. Harry Grant is still, I think, 50-50 at this stage, isn't he? Hence the fact Reed Marnie's come into the side as well. I think Harry Grant, if he doesn't play, will be a big loss. I don't think Reed Marnie is in the same ballpark. Yeah, he's not. He's not, unfortunately. So I think that'll be a big loss. And I still think the back five for Queensland, albeit, the players we've all just gone through, I don't know. I just think that's where it's. I'm not confident. So to answer your question, no, I'm not confident.
Well, no Fafita, Bebbo. What do you say to that?
Oh, well, look. Before I get to that, right, because that's frustrating me, but I just want to that Reed Marnie, Chris. You say, okay, so he's not up to the same standard as Harry Grant, and he's not 100%. He's playing good footy this year, though. He's having a good season, and I get why he's the next man up. But do you feel like if Harry Grant isn't good to go, and same if Ben Hunt wasn't good to go, do you think that they should ditch the two hooker system in that scenario and have that extra forward, especially when they've got a guy like Ponga on the bench? Or do you think that they should stick with that system? It seemed like they just kept going with the two hookers because they've got two players that you just cannot leave out of that team.
Yeah, they can't decide. Correct. Yeah, correct. I agree with you. I would just go back to the one hooker system. Your hooker's going to play 80 minutes regardless. So I just think leave him at hooker and just bring in an extra forward. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. The fact they can't split hairs between the two. They can't split hairs between Hunt and Grant. They have to kind of make this compensation for them. So yeah, I'd just run with the one and bring it forward for sure.
Right. Okay. So back to your question, Millsy. Okay. So David Fafita overlooked again, but I don't get it. No one in Australia gets it, obviously, outside of Billy Slater. That is it. You look at all the stats. He talks about his performances aren't that good this season. All of his stats are up on last year. His tackle efficiency is fucking the best it's ever been in his career, so it can't be a defensive thing. I don't understand. And when you put Ponga in this team with Reece Walsh and you've got that block runner on that left edge and those two link up, who attracts more defensive attention, Kurt Capewell or Dave Fafita? Like, can you just imagine Fafita hitting that short line of Ponga and how much that defence either has to freeze or leave poor Mitchell Moses getting fucking trampled all day long? So I actually thought that with Ponga back in, this is the perfect time to bring Fafita in because, like the Ponga Walsh thing, and I don't agree with you, Chris. I know last week I said if Walsh doesn't look good in his last Brisbane game, I'd drop him too. But he came out, he put all those demons to bed as far as I'm concerned against Penrith. He fucking muscled up. He was jamming people. He didn't look scared one bit, and that was the only concern I had with him. I think he's fine to go. Leave him at fullback. Ponga's going to come on. He's going to play lock. 20 minutes. He'll be the first interchange probably in that game. He'll come on, he'll play lock, and he'll just be a second sweeper on the left or the right. And honestly, the thought of Ponga getting the ball out the back of shape off Tommy did and squaring up the defence, having his edge forward hit short of him, Reece Walsh at the back with the fucking hammer and Cobbo running in the space off him is making me shoot more rope than R. Kelly at a 12-year-old's pool party. It is a thing of beauty. I've been hard all week thinking about it. So, look, I don't like the fact Fafita's not there because I think that would be even better with him there, like I mentioned. But I honestly can't explain why Dave Fafita, and Billy Slater hasn't even explained why Dave Fafita hasn't been picked because I don't think he even fucking knows. He clearly just doesn't like him. Maybe, I don't know. Obviously something's going on behind the scenes because all the talk about, his performances and it's not up to scratch and it's not up to his lofty standards. Well, it's not up to his lofty standards. Half his lofty standards is better than someone else's fucking top standards. So I don't get it. But I think they'll carve it, to be fair. You said you're not real happy with the changes or you don't think they're good, Chris. I think they'll carve it purely for defense, purely in an attacking team. As long as they can contain New South Wales go forward, then they are going to be so scary with that football. This is going to be a high-scoring game. I know that much.
I hope you're obviously. I want Queensland to win, and I think you've got to give Queensland at home. They start 10 points ahead, right? Because it's Queensland at home, game 3. They're 10 up from the get go. I don't know how they need to respond. Obviously, after last game, what happened last game? I just think when you look at the two sides now, just for me, I think that I just look at Queensland's back five still, and it just, like I said last week, obviously Taulungi's gone anyway, but I don't know. I just hope that they turn up this game. Obviously, I think they will because they're Queenslanders. But, yeah, I've actually got New South Wales 26-18, but I hope I'm wrong.
Is that just because you want to feel good, whatever the result? If Queensland win, it'll be all right. If you win your bet, you still be all right.
No, I know that's a typical English way to think, Millsy, but I don't know. I just feel like New South Wales. I don't know. Maybe I'm still scarred after that last game. Watching that last game was just pure domination.
It really is. It really is hard to guess, though, isn't it? Because we don't have, like we talked about last week, we don't have a proper representation of either side's capabilities against each other at their best. So neither game's been competitive. Yeah. So it's like which team turns up this week. But
you're kind of in the dark.
Well, I feel like we've definitely seen New South Wales at their best. Like that was their best performance they could have done.
Yeah, but Queens,
we haven't seen Queensland play their best. We haven't seen the best versus the best yet.
Yeah, that's right.
So we know what standard New South Wales can. We just don't know what Queensland is. Whether they can reach that, and do you think we can reach that or exceed it in this game, really? And from what you're saying, I think you reckon they can, Bebbo. I'm on the side of Chris here, unfortunately. I'm a bit nervous, to be honest, but I think that's from the shell shock of the first half from last.
I think that's all it is. Yeah.
I just don't like Queensland won't start the way they did last game. They won't. They've been notoriously bad in Melbourne every game that they've played there.
Yeah.
I thought that they'd push through it. Billy Slater being from the Storm, who spent so much time in Melbourne, maybe he could talk them through it. They could fucking play their normal game. They will come out at Suncorp and they will be whacking motherfuckers straight off the bat. Mm-hmm. And once the first sting, and if they can contain New South Wales for that 15, 20 minutes, just stay in a battle, a yardage battle with them. Once they start putting guys like Ponga on the field and that, there is so much speed in that Queensland outside backs. There is no way New South Wales are going to be able to be tight through the middle as well. So they're either going to have to do one thing. They're going to have to be tight through the middle to stop Queensland's go forward and risk getting stitched up on the edges, or they're going to have to stay wide so they don't get stitched up on the edges, which is going to allow the guys, Queensland's smaller pack, to use their footwork to go on and get in between tackles and quicker play the balls and get a quicker roll on. So it's a pick your poison moment, and I know that works the other way too, don't get me wrong. And that's what I'm saying. If Queensland can do that job and muscle up in defence, and I think they will because they're playing in front of a Queensland crowd in a decider. They're going to come out, I think, fucking 10 foot tall and bulletproof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I agree with that. Yep. I think if New South Wales get 10, 12 up early on and take the crowd out of it, it's going to be a harder battle for them. But I think that, like I said before, I think Queensland at home is 10 up already with that crowd. And so if it gets into a battle and it gets close, that the crowd will get them home, and that the fact that they're playing in front of a home crowd and wearing the Queensland jersey will spur them on. So I also think that, being so dominated in that second game, very rarely do you see teams come out after being humbled, absolutely humbled. Look at the Warriors, right? 66-6, came out the next week and put a show on the Broncos, right? Now I know that's that's NRL.
Everyone's doing that these days.
To the Broncos.
It's not. Yeah, sucks to be a Broncos supporter, but it's typically what happens, right? So, I mean, you'd know that being English, Millsy, watching that, like, watching England get pants, and then, so yeah, I don't know. I think if they get a few up, then yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. What's your guys' predictions?
I was just going to say before we jump onto predictions, and I'll start with I'll do my prediction after this, but I think two big factors which have helped me this week. If you just look at the trail out for New South Wales, I know we didn't rate his performance as highly as everyone else rated it, but his presence in camp does account for something. And if you look at KP coming in for Queensland and the presence he'll have in camp, as well as on match day, I think those two omissions and additions are massively in Queensland favour. So that does give me quite a lot of hope. I can't remember what game it was when KP came back from injury in game 3 1 or 2 years ago, and just the presence he has on the pitch at that arena, it's his time to shine.
He didn't come back from injury. He was just playing fullback and had just like a absolute amazing game. I think he ran for nearly 300 metres. He was brilliant.
And that's his arena. Like, he is built for that. If there's one person on the planet who I think is probably the most, built for that situation, it is definitely KP. So having him around the squad and just his leadership capability as well is pretty big for Queensland, because they did lack that a bit when they were in the trenches. They missed that. Prediction. I'm going to go 24-20 Queensland, I think.
I'm going to...
Didn't you just say New South Wales?
He fucking did.
I can't say it. I can't say it. I do think... I'm nervous. I said I was nervous about it. I can't get it out of my head, but I do think my head actually does say Queensland to win. It's more like... it's weird. It's like heartache, not my heart is saying New South Wales, if you know what I mean. What about you, Bebbo? Who you got?
I'm going to go 32-24 Queensland. Big, lots of points.
Yeah, right. And Chris, you sort of said yours already, but do you want to double down on it?
26-18 New South Wales. Yeah.
Pretty even. Yeah, right. Okay. Well,
I think the stats stay pretty. There's some crazy stat that I saw the other day about, typically if you win game 1, they'll go on to win game 3. Like, I think it's only happened where they haven't won like a handful of times in the series. So,
well, last time that happened was 94, apparently.
What's that? They lost game 1 and 1.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that. Well, I'm not sure if it's overall, but definitely when Queensland won.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah. I reckon that's how Queensland started. I swear that's happened since, surely.
And I think New South Wales have only ever won 2 deciders in Queensland.
That's correct.
In history.
Yeah. So history is definitely on Queensland's side. I just think I'm shell shocked after that last one. So look, I hope they can prove me wrong. And obviously, I'm going for Queensland. Like I live in Queensland. So I'm going for Queensland. So I've gone for Queensland ever since I was a little kid. So.
Hey, before we move on, I just would like to ask your opinions, because I'm stoked for Mitch Barnett to get an actual game day jersey, like a spot where he's actually going to play minutes in this game, because he has been brilliant this season. He's had such a good season. He's 100%. Been good for years. Even as at Newcastle, is really good. So, do you think? Obviously, Best was coming in for Latrell. I don't even think that should even be questions. That was always the way. But do you think Mitch Barnett replacing Ola Kawatu makes New South Wales better?
100%.
What about you, Millsy?
100%.
I don't think it would change him that much, to be honest.
I think it makes him better. In fact, I said, like, when we picked our teams for the New South Wales and Queensland at the start, before any games were even played, I had Mitch Barnett as my starting front rower, I'm pretty sure. Starting lock I had him as. He is being so good. He's such a workhorse. He'll play big minutes, and he can play in the middle. He can play on the edge. And I think that was the problem with Olakau'atu. They either put him on the edge or they don't. So if Liam Martin's killing it, and they've got who is even their left edge? I can't even think. Fucks me. Anyway, yeah. But if their edges are killing it, he's not getting on, because he's not really used as a middle. So I think Mitch Barnett actually makes New South Wales. I think this New South Wales team's better than the last one purely for his inclusion, into the side.
Behind Fanua Blake, he's been the best Warriors, one of the best Warriors, probably the best Warriors forward behind Fanua Blake.
I actually reckon he's been better than Fanua Blake this year, and I love AFB. Probably my favourite front row, but I reckon he's been better than him this year. You don't like him because he's leaving. Is that why? Because he's leaving?
Yeah.
Is James Fisher-Harris your new favourite?
Yeah. He will be when he turns up for sure.
Yeah, righto. All right, let's move on to one of our weekly segments, and we'll go to our massive sports cock of the week, and we will go through the results from last week. Will we Bebbo before you give us your nomination?
Don't know, will we? We tried this last week, and it times out. I have to. I thought I'd be prepared last week and have it up in front of me, but it timed out, and then I had to reset and go back. So look, last week was a landslide victory. Kind of like the three of us in a beauty competition. Neither of you scored votes, and I scored all of them. No. So the UFC for kicking fighters out after their fight and not letting watch the rest of the card got 0%. Cristiano Ronaldo flooding the German football pitch with his tears got 0%. And the LA Lakers for drafting Bronny James got 100% of the votes. And why shouldn't it? It's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard of.
And we must have got like 1,000 votes then. We don't know the statistics overall, but
994 votes last week.
Go. Yeah.
Somewhere between 4 and 994.
Cool. So who's your nomination for this week, Bebbo? You want to kick us off?
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, look, I almost took Jerome Luai, who needed to be saved by a lifeguard from a wave pool this week, but then I thought, is a darker-skinned guy that's afraid of the water really that big of a deal? I mean, there's millions of them, isn't there? And obviously there is. They're all afraid of the water. So I'll instead nominate UEFA for appointing German referee Felix Zweier for tomorrow morning, which will probably be in the past once you're listening to this semi-final in the Euros between England and Netherlands. So Zweier in 2005 served a 6-month ban for his involvement in a match-fixing scandal. So how he's even allowed to be involved in professional sport is beyond me. Officiating such a high-profile game with such a shady pass is as incomprehensible as how Matt Burton thinks gravity works on a flat planet. So this week's nomination is the UEFA, whoever came up with it, putting him as the official, I guess.
Well, that's given me my excuse already if we lose. So thanks for that, mate.
Well, there's English players already whinging about it, so they've already lost in their own minds, mate.
And now we're just preloading them. It's just part of the plan. Chris, who's your nomination for this week?
This week I'm going to the Canadian rapper Drake, who many of you may or may not be familiar with. But Drake is quite the gambler. He put some pretty crazy bets on. I think he won a couple of million on Italy to win a World Cup, or Italy to win a World Cup, and he put some money on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, which is not hard. But anyway, but what he's done is he's put $300,000. So he's Canadian. He's put $300,000 on Canada at 9.6 to 1 to beat Argentina in the Copa America semi-final, which was played today. So if you're not familiar, Argentina has one of the best players in the world, Lionel Messi, and as such, they won 2-0, and he lost $300,000. So my sports cock of the week is the man with too much money, Drake.
He's lost
to flaunt it.
He's lost some way worse bets on UFC and things. He's puts like $1.2 million on fighters. They get starched every time.
Yeah, they call it. Apparently, they call it Drake.
The Drake curse.
Drake's curse now. Yeah. The Drake curse. Yeah. Yeah. So he apparently put some money on Conor McGregor to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov. He put half of
that did not last well. Yeah. Cool.
Silly.
And then
anyway,
my nomination for this week is none other than potential perennial winner of Massive Sports Score of the Week for many things, but it's Novak Djokovic for his role as pantomime villain at Wimbledon. He was playing a Norwegian player, goes by the name Rune, and if you chant Rune, it sounds like booing. Anyway, a lot of audience members, according to Djokovic, pounced on the opportunity to join in with the Rune chants, saying boo every time Djokovic hit the ball, or not hit the ball after every point, sorry. And he obviously was not very happy in the post-match interview. And later on that evening, he got interviewed again, where the journalist was asking him questions about how the crowd make you feel, et cetera, and take your point, Chris. It was probably shitty journalism at its finest. However, Djokovic then asked, have you got any other questions? The journalist went on to proceed to ask him about the upcoming match against Demonor and walked off. So he got his way, walked off. And it's like Virat Kohli for me, Djokovic. It's sort of always been the pantomime villain, just needed to get him into a nomination. And he's done himself a favour and popped something up like this to qualify this week. So my nomination is Novak Djokovic for acting like a petulant child again.
It turns out that its side effect of the COVID vaccine is thicker skin.
Which he didn't pick up, obviously, but it's Novak's nice.
Yeah, that was the joke, yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, just making sure. I'm sure our esteemed listeners are informed, but just in case. Oh, very good. So you'll be able to vote on all of our nominations on Spotify. So yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, scroll down and click your vote now. Moving on, chaps. The Under-20 Rugby Union World Cup is happening, and we wanted to discuss this because we have talked about this on a previous podcast, and it's with respect to the tournament setup. So in the Under-20 World Cup, there's 3 groups of 4, and what they have are the top ranked 4 teams after the pool stages, so the winners of the 3 groups and the best placed second place across the 3 groups go on to play a semi-final competition. The next seeded 4 teams across the 3 leagues, they go and play their own semi-final, and then the bottom ranked 4 teams then go and play their own semi-final. So the games sort of continue throughout, and the lesser teams who typically wouldn't get much airtime, in this case Spain, because they knocked out Scotland to get into the Under-20 World Cup, which is hilarious. They get to play more matches and get greater exposure they typically would. Now, something we discussed regarding I think it was the Rugby Union World Cup, and how I said I wanted to see more of your Romanias and Georgias and stuff like that, because you never get to see them. They turn up at the World Cup, they do good, they get knocked out, obviously, in the group stages, and then that's it. You don't see them again for another 4 years. Whereas this sort of format, I know it's going back to what we said, everyone gets a medal, but it's more about just the continuation of the tournament, and you could play these games midweek. Because in the Rugby Union World Cup, you get to a point and you have so much rugby during the week, all the pool stages going on, heaps of games, gets to knockouts, and you have to wait a week because rugby, and the same with rugby league, you have to wait a week for the players to get rested, and then because of the safety is the most important thing and all that jazz, and then it just completely kills the momentum in the tournament. So you could play those midweek matches as the sort of tier 2, tier 3 knockout games, and you would just have consistently more rugby, plus you'd get to see more of these lesser teams, and they would also get more money because more playing time typically equals more money. So Chris, I don't know if you followed the Under-20 World Cups or you've ever done so, but New Zealand were pretty good back in the day. They've not been so hot recently, but is it something you follow on your radar at all, or not anymore?
Not really. I mean, I've been having a look at this one, and I was more interested in around some of the stuff that happened today with the results and the games that were called off and how that went about. You guys, did you see that? Are you across that?
Yeah. Is it Australia?
Australia and Ireland.
Australia,
Australia Ireland is the contentious one. So what happened was, and so this, to take a step back, so I suppose to provide some context, the Australia Ireland game got called off due to severe weather, rain, inundation, and flooded the pitch, so on and so forth. So match officials came on, deemed it too dangerous to play. The whole competition, there's been a number of games throughout the competition where they've been playing in similar type conditions, and the games have either gone ahead or continued to play. So I think actually the New Zealand-Spain game got cancelled. It got called at half time today due to the rain. So, but the contentious point about this one is that the Australia-Ireland game got called off before it even got underway. Like I mentioned, the officials came on, reviewed the pitch, said no. And then an hour later, they came on and went, oh, yep, there's been sufficient drainage. So it allowed 2 more games to be played later on. And 2 of those games were South Africa and England, obviously versus each other. So I just think is there a bit of nepotism going on? I suppose a couple of questions. Number one, was Australia hard done by? And number two, is there nepotism going on with, people getting in the ears? By all accounts, the Irish doctor got in the ear of the World Rugby officials, and because what had happened is, or the outcome is that Australia and Ireland took points each, which means that Australia didn't finish, or Ireland finished ahead of them, and have since progressed. So, yeah, a couple of questions in that for me is it nepotism? Should the games be, I suppose, played at a different time, given the fact that it is such a crucial result? Interesting they didn't reschedule it.
Well, to be quite frank, Australia would have. Well, they were big underdogs to win that anyway. They'd already lost to Georgia or Italy, I can't remember which one, whereas Ireland unbeaten in the group stages. So I do think Australia would have lost that either way. So it probably was in their favour to actually get some points out of it, because they might have ended up becoming third in the group below Georgia if they hadn't got anything from it. But yeah, just go back to your point, just to plug England. They did turn over South Africa in their own patch in that game that did go ahead. But fuck, the conditions were wild. One of the South African tries, if you've not seen the highlights, it's he basically kicks the ball. It lands in the puddle 5 meters away. It stops, kicks the ball again. It happens again, and it's a shocking one. Takes me back to like club rugby back in England. And
but it's not soccer. It's not soccer. When have they ever pulled up rugby union or rugby league games because of rain? Fucking never. If you go back to game 2 of the Women's State of Origin and League, there was puddles all over that field. Like, no kicking was bouncing anywhere. It is not soccer. If he kicks the ball 5 meters and it stops, who gives a shit? Don't kick the ball anymore. Pass the ball. It's actually a different aspect of the game. Maybe not for South Africans who just ruck, maul, kick. So the fact they called it off is fucking ridiculous. And I'm with you, Millsy. Australia probably would have got their fucking pants pulled down and smashed. But I'd rather go out that way as an athlete and finish third in the pool as opposed to second, because they're not in the top pool anyway. And like Ricky Bobby said, if you ain't first, you're last. It doesn't matter if you finish in the top pool, the second pool, or third pool. Sorry, it doesn't matter if you finish second or third pool. If you don't finish the top pool, who gives a shit? So I would have rather been given that opportunity to turn up and try and mow Ireland down. Now, they probably wouldn't have, because they would have had to win by about 20 points, I'm pretty sure, just to beat them on for and against. But I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they've called off a game of rugby union because of rain. Cricket, yes. Soccer, yes. Games where the bounce of the ball really, really matters, yes. Rugby union is one of those sports. Just fucking play in the rain.
I remember one of matches I played at uni. I do agree with you, Bebbo. It shouldn't matter. You can play rugby in any condition unless the pitch is frozen, which does happen quite a lot in England. But we played a match at Varsity, and it was a really sold out stadium, and it was horrendous weather, and the centre spot where the kickoff was about because it had sort of like had a hollow because it's a lot of the rugby's played there. There's about 300 mil deep of water. So every time there was a ruck there, the ref had to pause the game, move the ruck away because he was afraid if someone was going to drown in the center of the pitch at the bottom of a ruck. But this wasn't that bad. And like you said, if there's a way, you can make the games happen. There wasn't 300 mil deep of water in the center of that pitch. It's still a well-established stadium in Cape Town. So yeah, I think it was the England and South Africa did tear up the pitch. That's granted. So maybe they were just trying to preserve it and play a little bit smoke and mirrors and try and get the South Africans playing, which is great because, like I said, again, England beat them. So that was good news. But yeah, that's
Is it being played at the same stadium over and over again?
No. No, there's some in Stellenbosch, there's some in Cape Town, and that I think is actually it. Just going down the fixtures now. Yeah, just Stellenbosch and DHL Stadium in Cape Town. But as they've now churned up the pitch, it's going to be difficult to turn that around. But yeah, no, it is a pretty good competition. Like Bebbo and I going through the results earlier, and New Zealand were pretty dominant in the early days, and you could probably draw tangents from the dominant period they had between. Well, quite a lot of dominance, obviously, but especially between 2011, 2015. And then sort of South Africa came a bit more dominant with England chipping in as well up to 2019. And now Italy are up and coming. It is all France. It is all France. And that's definitely worrying for World Rugby, especially after they turned over Argentina with essentially a C team against the Argentinian A team away from home. So France are looking very spicy. But yeah, no, it is a good one to watch and complement the Euros. Yeah.
Oh, see, you go back to. Sorry, I'm going to cut right back to what you said about the format, Millsy, at the start. Mm-hmm. I'm not a fan of this format, and I'll tell you why. Because you got 3 pools. Top team from each pool clearly advances to the top semi-final system, and then they take the best second-ranked team from results. Now, what's to stop the second best team and the first best team ending up in the same pool? And I know you're going to say, "Oh, well, that's about seeding and all this shit," right? I get that, but if you end up in a system where you're in a pool with 3 decent, like 1 really good team and 2 decent teams, where you can't just smash them off the pitch and get a heap of for and against points. And then you've got someone else who's in a group with 1 good team and 2 absolutely dog shit teams. They will push through because they'll have a high for and against, smashing those dog shit teams where you've got a more respectable for and against system. There's not enough of a sample size for this to work, as far as I'm concerned. I had the same thing probably with the Euros when we talked about last week about just picking that next thing. If you're in a weak pool, well, you're going through. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that the 4 best teams make the semi-finals. And like I said, if the 2 best teams end up in the same group somehow, the fact that they don't get the chance to be in that semi-finals and make that maybe the grand final that should be is absolutely ludicrous. And yes, I know you're talking about saying, okay, teams 12 and 11 and 10, they fill in midweek things. And that works in this system because they use this as relegation for next year's Rugby World Championships? Does this play into it? If you finish last in this year's Rugby World Championships, do you get relegated from next year, or is there a play-in pool?
I think there is a playoff. I do remember Scotland when they got relegated to Tier 2, they had to play off and they lost to Spain. I think so. Okay. There is that synergy there. So it's not just like whoever loses this one gets relegated and the winner of the other one gets.
So that works in this because they play it every year except for 3 years due to COVID. I'm assuming because it was all during that Wuhan period of eating bats. But it won't work in Rugby World Cup because it's every 4 years. So the team that's playing this year is going to be completely different to the team playing in 4 years' time. You can't use this team's poor performance against what that team might be in 4 years. So, yeah, it does get more games, but what's the point? You're talking about injuries to players and that are just pointless games, literally pointless games.
Well, I would actually remove points difference as a defining factor on who finishes where in the group, because you get the situations where, exactly like you said, Bebbo, New Zealand have got to beat Spain more than France beat Spain. What sort of competition are you trying to nurture there? You don't want to see that. You want to see competitive rugby. You want to see, Spain get a few points that encourages the youngsters to, carry on their careers. Otherwise, you get these results where New Zealand always notoriously flogged like Samoa by 100 points in 2003 World Cup and stuff like that. It's just not. No one wants to watch that. No one wants to play in that either. It's embarrassing for all involved. But in the rugby, the full men's one, they do have 4 groups, so you would be ranked
the top 2
each way. Yeah, so the top 2 would go through, and the next 2, and then
and that's what I mean. I'm happy with that.
It's just because of the amount of teams that they've got, and they have expanded this. There used to be just 2 pools, and now they've got 3. So maybe that's what they're trying to get to eventually.
Get to exactly like the World Cup,
yeah. Why the Euros do it, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it just tries to keep more teams in the fight and something else to play for. Because you could be out of the competition after your first game, almost in the Euros. Because if you get flogged 4-0, it's a tough road back. And
not really, just win your next 2. If you beat every team except for one, well, you're always going to finish second. Doesn't matter what happens, you're always going to finish second.
No, because you can draw the other 2, and one team can win 3 or win 1. And
I said beat though, didn't I? I said if you beat every team but one, you're always going to finish second.
Yeah.
So that's
I'm trying to think of situations
that is on you then, right? Okay, yep, you had one bad performance. It's on you now to prove that you belong in that next stage. If you draw the next game or you draw the next 2 games, well, clearly you don't deserve to go into that next level. So off you go. Go home.
Yeah.
But in this system, okay, and Australia's a good example. Argentina's another good example because neither of them qualified for the top 2. Argentina lost 1 game. And it was to England, clearly. They've beaten South Africa, who you'd have to assume have a pretty strong under-20s team. And they've beaten Fiji, who got flogged by absolutely everyone. But they play a fair bit of union. But Fiji's the only chance they've got there to rack up a heap of points.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you've got Spain and Wales, who clearly aren't that good because all their good players go play for England.
Wales wouldn't be easy beats either, though. Not typically.
No.
I mean, Australia didn't deserve to make it through because they couldn't even beat either Italy or Georgia. I mean, they beat Italy or Georgia, but they lost to one of them. If you can't beat them, well, you don't deserve to go through the next level. I get that. But Argentina not making that next level, what makes France better than Argentina? I guess what I'm saying is maybe you should have a playoff game there. I know that adds an extra game to it, but
for that spot,
yeah, it's got to have something. The fact that Argentina have not made this the top tier semi-final by 14 for and against points is, well, it's a bonus point. But again, that comes back to the competition they play against too. But that comes back to the competition play against too. So it's I don't like it. I think it's not a very good system at all.
I do like how once you've finished the group stages, even if you don't qualify in the top or best place second spot, you still have something to play for. I do like that. That's the aspect I like of it. But I agree. I don't like how they do that second place team.
As a player, would you be happy to play for 5th or 9th?
If I'm playing in the Rugby World Cup, hell yeah.
Well, it's a World Championship.
If I'm playing for Spain, might be my only chance I ever get to play in the World Cup. You still have a chance to play for something. It's still part of the experience.
It's not a World Cup. It's a Rugby World Championship, a World Rugby Championship, mate.
Yeah, this is under 20s though. Like I'm saying, this isn't the full fledged. And also, if I was playing for under 20s, yes, I absolutely would, because chances are you're not going to make it as a senior player. Like the conversion rate is extremely low from under 20s to senior. This might be the only chance that a lot of these players get to represent their country at a tournament. So, yeah, I still would 100%. Like it would obviously, it's not as great as winning the actual cup, but still pulling on your jersey representing your nation is still pretty cool, right? And you want to do that as many times as possible, irrelevant of what you're playing for.
I reckon the guys from Georgia who are playing under 20s are going straight into the senior squad.
There's and Spain's squad's probably the same under 20s to the seniors, right?
That's their next World Cup squad. That's their next World Cup.
I reckon you're looking at it. 2027, it's those blokes running around.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But yeah, no, I hear what you say, but I completely disagree, Bebbo. So.
Well, fair enough.
Alrighty, well, we'll round out the episode then with our last weekly segment, and it is our unsolicited financial advice multi. We'll kick this week off with Chris's multi. So who are you backing this week, Chris?
Mate, this week I've got a 3-legger. So actually, we go to last week. How did we go last week? Before we kick off,
we didn't fare that well. Chris, you went Cody Walker and South to win 1-12, and Jack White and put an arrow through your heart in the dying stages there and put South out by more than 12 points. So that ended that one. I had Melbourne to win against West Tigers with Jerome Hughes anytime. Now, Jerome Hughes just spent all day setting up tries and didn't bother scoring any of his own. And Millsy's picked England to beat the Kiwis, which was the All Blacks, sorry, which is fucking stupid. So that never came off.
Yeah, fair cool.
I think
only 2 legs out of 5. Yeah.
I was playing 129 to 1. So 129 to 1 from memory.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. All right. So this week I'm going to 3-legger. I'm going Thug Bros in the UFC this weekend to beat Tracy Cortez. I'm going Leon Edwards to beat Bilal Muhammad, and I'm going Spain to win the Euros on Monday morning. Sorry, Millsy.
What's it paying?
It's $3.45.
Righto. Hey, on that Thug Ramajunas, how do you even pronounce her last name? Yeah, Rose Namajunas. Namajunas. Yeah. Do you reckon she's done? Obviously, you don't, but I feel like she's done. I don't think Tracy Cortez is that much either. But
no, I think that's Look, that's the only reason I've chosen her. I still think she's obviously reaching the end of her career, but I still think she should beat Tracy Cortez. And I think if she doesn't, then you'd be.
Putting your gloves on the mat and walking out.
Well, yeah, you wonder if she'll be the next fight. She'll be getting a knock on the door and getting the old Andrei Arlovski. Do you want would you like a retirement package video to be shown after your fight, regardless of how you perform? So, yeah, Are
you ready to move to power slap yet?
She'll probably go to bare knuckle boxing, something like that. Yeah.
Fucking power slap's the dumbest shit I've ever seen. I won't even watch the highlights. I won't even give them the what's the word? The views, anything.
Viewership.
Yeah, of watching their highlights. It is the dumbest shit ever.
I'm surprised they have lowlights. Surely the highlights are the same as just watching it live, just without the bits in between.
Pretty much, yep. Everything except for the ads, and the commentary.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? How long before we start seeing that in pubs?
I thought we already saw it. We've been seeing that.
We're just at the bar.
We've been seeing that pubs all the time. Every time I see it on chicks, I used to compete all the time. Every time I hit on a chick.
Them on you, right?
That's like,
I hope.
Yeah, it was them. It slapped me. I've got an 93 record. Yeah, amateur.
Dana will give you a call soon.
All right. Well, okay. I've gone well off topic. I've gone one leg this week because I'm sick of fucking having one leg fail. So I might as well have 100% of them fail instead of 33% or 50%. So one leg. NRL, Dylan Lucas, anytime try score, running on in the centres this week. He's a try-scoring machine when he gets 80 minutes on the field. So Dylan Lucas, anytime try scorer. $3.05.
Nice. Just above the threshold as well. Cool. And I'm rounding out this multi with, and it can't avoid not getting a mention on the podcast. I've gone for James Anderson to get player of the match, not man of the match, which is important in today's world. In the test match between England and West Indies. And as I was talking to the fellas before this, hopefully it'll be like shooting fish in the barrel with that one. Whenever Virat Kohli plays for India, he always gets man of the match, irrelevant if he actually does well. So I'm hopeful that the love of the 650, and he's actually the shortest, 625, shortest odds of any player as well. So,
all right. So married all together, you get 65.81 before the power play on Sportsbet because they wouldn't let me power play for some reason. So spicy though.
It's good. Not as good as last week, but hopefully it will actually win this time.
Worked better than last week, yeah.
Well, the skin's almost worn off it. So that's us for this episode. Please follow us on our socials. Search for Mass Debated Sports on Facebook and Instagram.
Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever it is that you get your podcasts.
And most importantly, join us again next episode for some more engaging discussions,
diverse perspectives,
and to experience the friction of mass debated sports.
And when you're gone, we watch you walk